Hello, readers. Welcome to 20 Questions with Your Favorite Author, where we ask authors important questions like, why would you agree to be on this podcast? I'm Kelly Lynn Colby, editorial director at Cursed Dragon Ship Publishing. Our guest this week is Michael Scott Clifton, multi-genre writer and avid gardener. Multi-award-winning author Michael Scott Clifton is an avid gardener, rapacious reader, and movie junkie. A public educator for over 38 years, he lives in Mount Pleasant, Texas with his wife, Melanie. His books contain facets of all the genres he enjoys: action, adventure, magic, fantasy, and romance. If he's not your favorite now, he will be after. Welcome, Mike. How are you this fine evening?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
Excellent. Yes, we're enjoying as it's just, getting just a little cooler around here. How's the weather behaving for you?
Well, it's much cooler, and we got about an inch and a half of rain, which is about an inch and a half more we've gotten in the last month or so. So yeah, it was awesome. Absolutely awesome.
It's very cool. I do like the rain, but I don't really miss mowing the yard. So I don't know. It's kind of a...
Yeah, but grass, when you're walking through it, if it's going crispy crunch like Rice Krispies, it's got too dry.
Right.
It's time for some rain.
That is very true. Definitely Rice Krispies out there, no doubt. So it's you enjoy action, adventure, magic, fantasy, romance, all of these?
Yes,
but
ma'am.
Which one's your favorite?
Gosh. Well, if you pick a genre like fantasy and the elements that you have listed are part of fantasy, action, adventure, fantasy without it would be kind of like a pillow with no fluff. So, I like a good story. I was told long time ago by an author that I really respect, that no matter what else you do, a good story is key to whatever genre you write in. And so fantasy, action, adventure, I like that. I do not like, particularly with fantasy, I do not like world building that takes 200-300 pages to get to with no kind of advancement of characters or story arc.
100% agree.
And that's kind of the way I write, and that's the kind of regardless of genre, I like to read stories that move fast and don't leave you, half asleep after the first chapter.
Right? You're like, I can now draw the room, but I know nothing about this world. Yeah,
right.
No, I feel you.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
I get that. So what author sparked this love of fantasy in you?
Probably going to pick the same person that 90% of the other fantasy readers I know, and that is when I was in high school, I picked up a copy of Lord of the Rings and did The Hobbit. So Tolkien. I've loved fantasy ever since. And there was another book called The Face and the Frost by David Bellams, I believe it is, and those kind of got me started back when I was, like I said, a teenager. If I'd never picked up Lord of the Rings, I don't know. I might have probably stumbled across fantasy maybe later in life, but yeah, I've been hooked ever since.
That's awesome. I feel you. What was the trigger that made you decide you were going to sit down and take this writing thing seriously?
So when I was growing up, when I was a teenager and in college, when we had brick and mortar bookstores, you could walk into a bookstore.
We still have like one. Yeah.
Yeah, we have one or two. And we've got independent bookstores as well.
That's very true.
You'd walk into a bookstore and there'd be shelf after shelf after shelf of fantasy and science fiction. Right. That was the number one seller at that time. And I loved it. I read, Heinlein. I read, like I said, I read Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. And then, of course, I went off to college, didn't have as much time to read. And it seems like when I transitioned out of college and was now working, and I started having a little bit of time to start reading again, it seemed like the fantasy genre had changed somewhat in that interim. And what we talked about earlier.
Huge change in the 80s, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The books were getting thicker,
Mm-hmm.
and my interest was getting smaller. And then because it took so long to get to the point, they the fantasy building's huge. I mean, the world building's huge in fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very important. Always has been, always will be. But if it's giving you a book the size, if it's creating a book the size of a doorstop,
Mm-hmm.
then I've lost interest in it. So, going to bring this back around to what you originally asked,
Mm-hmm.
um, I stopped reading fantasy. It actually forced me to move on to other genres, and I started thinking that, gosh, I missed fantasy. I missed reading a good fantasy book, and I bet you I can write as good a fantasy book or better than this other stuff that takes forever to get to the plot line, and the characters are lost in the world building.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how kind of got started. And that's a story too. But yeah, that's how I got started. I wanted to see if I could try to write the kind of fantasy book which I used to enjoy reading.
I love it. And that's what they say, right? If you see something missing, there's something that you really want to read, well, then write it. I love it. And you're like, I will.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Well, how long did it take you to write that first book?
Oh, okay. So I started 12, 15 years ago. Okay. And actually, it was 2005. That's what it was, 2005. I remember now, so it's 17 years ago. So I got an idea for a fantasy series. I was coaching at the time. I was a public educator for almost 40 years. And I was a science teacher. I was a coach, and I was an administrator. I was a principal the last 17 years. I was an educator.
Oh, wow.
But at the time I was coaching, I was JV girls basketball coach. We were driving to a place that was an hour away. So I started thinking about like a fantasy story. I don't know how I started on that, Kelly, but I did. And I got excited about it. And when I got home, my wife, I just, she's there, and I just went right by her to the computer and started.
She's like, love you too. Did you
That's
win?
right. Yeah. See ya. Yeah. Bring my meals in here. So I just started. I had no idea what I was doing. Absolutely none.
Yeah.
I mean,
I remember
zero.
that. Yeah.
A blind man walking through a room you don't know, and you keep running into chairs and things like that. So by the time I finished, I had a 1 million word document, which I thought was the average size of the normal novel.
Oh, I remember this story now. Oh, I'm gonna have a heart attack again. Oh my gosh. Whew.
So anyway, long story short, I soon discovered that is not the size of a normal novel. And I was so disappointed.
Not even the abnormal novel. Yeah.
No. Not even a Robert Jordan or a Terry Goodkind novel.
No.
Yeah, that puts them to shame. They blushed with envy over
sure it. They did.
And
actually, they probably did. I'd be impressed if you sat down and wrote 1 million words that fast. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Well, it took me a while. It wasn't overnight. It took about a year or so. But like I said, I was proud of that. Then the shoe dropped, and oh no. So anyway, I decided I need to learn. Well, actually, you know what tipped me off?
What?
I decided I would print it out, a hard copy. Okay.
Oh no! Didn't the document tell you how long it was going to be?
Yeah, but it didn't register. It's just a number.
Okay.
So I printed it out, and by the time it finished, so help me, it filled a 5-inch binder that you could have used for a ship anchor.
Yes, because this is not a doorstop. This is a door.
No, that's right. but it took the visual to understand, drive the point home. Hey, there's something wrong with this picture.
That's incredible.
Yeah. That's when I decided I needed to maybe go to a writers' conference or join a writers' organization and figure out how this worked.
You're like, I don't know what I did wrong, but I know that's not quite right.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's smart though. I'm glad you decided, let me go instead of, because I will tell you personal experience, as in not me doing it, but seeing it, where people don't do that. They're like, look, I have my million words. I'm awesome now. And I'm just going to send this off to agents and publishers. So that was actually pretty awesome of you to think, you know what, maybe I should learn a little bit about this first. So
Yeah.
thank you. We need to get that word out more. We need to spread it around.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect. We're not going to do everything right, but why make everyone else's mistake, right? Make your own.
Right.
Make your
Right.
own. So your books now, so at this point, you've got quite a lot of books under your belt. So
That's
I'm
7
wondering,
novels.
oh, it's impressive. So I'm wondering, which one was the hardest to write?
The Okay, so really, the first book was the hardest to write
Mm-hmm.
because I was like I said, did the million word document, knew I needed to hone my writing skills, had to figure a lot of things out. So um, I started writing and learned more as I went along. So your first book is at least for me. I don't know. I can't speak for other authors, but for me, it's the one you probably remember the most one you probably made the most mistakes in, the one you probably liked the best or the proudest of when you finished with it. And
Mm-hmm.
that was all the above for me. But it was hard because I was having to put into practice the things that I'd heard other people who I knew were good authors did in their own writing, in their own books. But
Mm-hmm.
the hardest thing wasn't really the book; it was the series I just finished. And the reason it was the hardest is because I don't know. Again, for other people, it's
Mm-hmm.
probably other writers, it's probably be different. But when I write a series, the first book was okay.
Mm-hmm.
The second book was a little bit harder. Third book was harder still, and the fourth and last book in the series was the hardest of all. And I literally had to have the first 3 books like reference books next to me when I was typing because you have to keep all of those characters, all their traits, every little detail has
Mm-hmm.
to be consistent, and it's not as easy as someone might think. At least it isn't for
Right.
me.
Right.
So
So I think it's funny when the when we say, as writers, when we say the readers know our books better than we do and they don't believe us, I'm like, no, you do, because it's different in our head, right? First of all, we see it differently and we remember all the things we cut out. So it's hard to remember what actually ended up in there. What do we add? Her eyes were 4 different colors. Which one did I decide on? Where when you're reading the book, if we did our job right, it's always the same color. So you remember as the reader. So that is a
well,
really, really good point, right? You're doing these long series. You really need basically this entire guide to go along to keep up with it. So just so you know, readers, you really do know our stuff better than us, usually. So what comes to you first? So you said with your very first series that the world came to you first, right? The world building did.
mhm.
So normally what comes to you first now, world building or characters?
Characters, obviously. Well, the this I have an idea for a story. Okay, then the characters populate the story, and then the setting, which
Mm-hmm.
is the world building,
Mm-hmm.
follows that. I'm a little odd, Kelly, in that sometimes it's
Aren't
the
we all?
world. It's I'm not the most consistent person when it comes to that because sometimes I'll think, hey, this is a great idea for
Mm-hmm.
a world, and then the characters come it's like, okay, once I figure that out, I'll start putting the characters in the story. So uh
I get
um
that. If you ask a
so
what if question, it's usually what if, this happened with the world. Wouldn't that be cool? And we're like, wait, who would be in there? So no, I get that. Absolutely.
right. So
Yep.
I wish I was consistent with that, but I'm afraid I'm not. uh the
Fair.
cart sometimes comes before the horse, sometimes the horse comes after the cart, in the story. So you know
Sometimes the cart has no wheels.
that's yeah, exactly.
We were watching the new Lord of the Rings one.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't remember
Oh
the
yeah.
title. I like when things are done now I can watch them. I'm very impatient. I blame Netflix. I didn't used to be. At least not about that. Sorry. I want to put that in before Zafo jumps in and says exactly how impatient I am, and he would not be wrong. The when they were saying, did the wheels fall off your cart, right? Like that was their, cursing thing. That was their things. And I'm making a new world right now, and I'm already 10 chapters in, and sometimes you have to go back and do things. I'm like, man, I haven't done cursing yet. How am I going to do cursing? So yes, right? Like there's all these things that you have to invent, and you never know where it's going to come from. You're like, cursing. How would they curse in this world? So, and it's a YA, so I don't just want to use our words, right? Which they probably would use. Let's face it. That's kind of what cursing is. If they're speaking English, they're going to use those words too. But I need a creative way to do it and something that would feel authentic to their world. So is there anything like when you're creating your worlds where you sat down that you had to do that you didn't think before you started writing? You're like, ooh, I really need to think about that.
Yes and no, in that if you got a good idea for a story, you got your characters, you got your world building, and then you're starting to write along. And for example, in the series, the Conquest of El series, the fantasy series I wrote, I wanted to have magic, right? Okay, right? Yeah, magic and fantasy, yeah.
It's like the one required thing. You've got to have magic.
Right.
Yep.
So how do you deliver? But then it dawned me, okay, now you have to have rules. So what rules would you have? And then the last part was, well, how does it work? Kind of like a gamer that's, you're making a game and you have you have, what are the rules here?
What are the mechanics?
So, right. So I decided what I would do is I'd make a parallel world where magic works in the same way technology does. And it has replaced technology. So, so magic powers the things that they do. And they have lodestones are like magical batteries. Then you have 3 different kinds of magic: artifice magic, locomotive magic, and my mind just went back. The third one is locomotive, artifice, and potions and powders. Okay, magic. So
gotcha. That's the cooking one. All the chefs, man.
right. But it works the way technology does. So, and so you're either expert in one of the others. You can do it if you're a grandmaster, if you've mastered all 3 of those. If not, you're good at just one section of it. So sometimes, when you start out with a general premise like that, you're talking about, you have to think it through. Okay, well, if there's 3 kinds of magic, then who can use them? How does it work? Can one person you do it all, or are you specific to the kind of magic? So that kind of stuff, yeah, that's where I'm a lot like CJ, who you interviewed last week. We're both pantsers, so I just let that rock along. And when I get to that road bump, okay, let's see, how can I figure out how to make this fit right? So yeah, so sometimes it's not designed the way it came out in your mind, but it ends up okay because you work it out.
I love it. We get to it eventually.
Yeah.
We get to it eventually. And cursing. That's what I have to do tomorrow. There'll be lots of cursing tomorrow. It's going to be an interesting environment. So which of your characters do you relate to the most?
Ooh, wow. I never thought about that. I still have to answer that question. I'm just kidding.
You agreed to be on this podcast.
So let's see. I've got in the Treasure Hunt Club, which was my first book. It's a kind of a magical realism. It's kind of like Goonies adults meet Indiana Jones, kind of an action adventure with a mystical twist to it. So in the Treasure Hunt Club, the main character is a 30-something young man whose luck only runs one way. It's all bad. He's always making shortcuts in life that never work out, so he can't hold a job or keep a relationship. So, but one day he finds a magical book which can find anything down through history which has ever been lost. So he decides to get rich quick by using it like a treasure map. So the character, his name's Nick. Okay.
I'm starting to see why he only has bad luck.
Yeah. So I was a lot like Nick when I was younger, because I was always looking for those shortcuts and nothing ever seemed to work out. And no matter how many times, it's like you walking down the trail in the forest, there's a big hole in the ground. Instead of walking around it, you keep walking right into it each time and falling in. And
you see it, but surely you're not going to fall in.
Oh, no. So Anyway, some lessons in life are hard learned over and over again. So, and I can relate to Nick's character in that regard.
I love that. What was the name of that series again? What was that?
The name of the book was The Treasure Hunt Club. It's a standalone novel. It was my first book. Yeah.
That's so fun. So of all of your worlds, which one would you like to spend a week in?
Oh, well, the Conquest of the Veil. Meredith is the pair, because on the right side of it, it's a parallel world. It's a parallel world of Earth, but there's a magical barrier called the Veil, which divides it into a good side and an evil side. Okay. If you're on the good side, then all the elements that I think attract people to fantasy, that like the kind of imaginative with fairies, and with magic that actually works, with mythical creatures and things like that. It just, that's always fascinated me. And so, yeah, I'd love to be on that part of it. I don't want to be on the bad side, the evil side, trapped behind, on the evil side. So, I think Meredith would be, it'd be neat to, instead of having to plug in something, I just have something with load zones on it, and it does the work for me, and, no pollution, no diesel fumes in the air.
No. Well, there has to be a downside, though. What's the downside?
Well, the downside is they have to be charged because they run out. There's a cost to everything. And if you're not a magister or a grandmaster, then you have to get someone to do it for you. It comes at a cost, just like everything else, and whatever you do, it does come at a cost.
Just checking. I'm like, there has to be. I mean, they might not have, smog, but there's got to be something. I mean, otherwise it's boring, right? Just like you said, stuff has to happen, man. Right. We need that action and adventure. And usually it is our fault. So.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, not my fault. It's always somebody else's fault. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're not writing it or anything.
No.
Yeah, I used to have a question that I would ask a lot that was, if you could meet one of your characters, who would it be? And so many authors were all like, none of them. They would hate me. Do you know what I did to them? I was like, that's a good point. It's a very good point. I should ask a different question. Is there anywhere you visited in real life that inspired a place in your novel?
Oh, let's see. I think the best answer I could give to that is I'm a very visual person. Mm-hmm. So if I see a YouTube video or a movie of I've never been to the Mediterranean, for example, but I have seen stunningly beautiful pictures and videos taken from an elevated position of the ocean that is like turquoise, just blue, just so beautiful, and so places like that you can see, even though you may not actually have ever been there, that's kind of the things that I think of that I can go to. Love to go to Pacific Island, with the coconuts and the palm trees and, clear blues, sky and ocean and things like that. Yeah.
Yep. Like make it all happen. Make it all happen. Are you on YouTube again? I'm doing research. I swear. Totally doing research. Actually, now he has to yell at me for being on TikTok. I don't mean to, okay? It eats me. So we talked earlier about CJ Peterson, who we had on last week, and you and her co-host a podcast. What was the podcast called?
Book World: The Great Escape.
I love it. I got to guest on it, and I had so much fun. What do you like about this form of connecting with your audience?
Well, it gives you a broad discretion on the topics you cover. I'm sure y'all same way, and so, you can do a book review, you can interview an author, different genres. You can talk about a certain aspect of writing, like character arcs, or world building. It's pretty diverse, and I guess you're only limited by, uh, by your imagination, and because it's a big world and there's tons of writers. Uh, we could do a pod. I'm sure y'all have. You could do a podcast. You've been doing it for 2 years now, and you'll probably never. You could do it 200 years, and you'll never run out of material or authors to interview. So I like it because I learned myself, say,
Mm-hmm.
about talking to other people and having them as guests on there,
Right.
because everyone brings a little bit different point of view to something that you may
Mm-hmm.
never even thought of before.
Yep, I agree. It's fun, right?
Oh
We only
yeah.
do this one topic though. Well, we do play D&D
Okay.
on Monday nights, so that's kind of fun.
Right.
I mean, the authors bring their own topics. We just bring their personalities. It's a lot of fun.
So do you have your Hellfire t-shirts on when you do that? Hellfire Club?
No, no. I think I wore a Dragon Con t-shirt yesterday, so close enough.
Okay.
Close enough. I think that counts. For all of the Stranger Things cosplay at Dragon Con, I think we totally counts. So we talked a little bit about the weather and the rain, and I had to stop myself from asking you about your gardening since that's in your bio. I have to say, I loved gardening for a long time. I tried for years, but I had to give up because it was just so hard to get things to grow in the heat or the shade or the full sun, and sometimes all in the same garden plot. And then you can't trust the little tags because we're in Houston and it says this is, a perennial or it's, this is great for, spring, but it's not great for our spring. It only works in winter, things like that. So just knowing, I was so frustrated. So I am wondering, my question actually is, I'm not here just to complain. I mean, I am here to complain, but not just complain. What is
Okay.
right? I have more motives. What is the appeal of the utter frustration of planting your money in the ground and watching it die?
Oh well, there's no appeal to that. No, no. Yeah,
So gardening?
you want to be nurturing. Well, I think gardening is very for me. It's very soothing, and uh, you are right. It's sometimes frustrating. This year has been really frustrating when it hasn't rained a
With no
drop.
rain. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're having to water things not to make them bloom, just to keep them alive.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it is 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. But I enjoy it, and I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a desert. Uh, so
Yes. You're like
you know,
green.
yeah, you can grow cacti and scrub grasses, but moved to East Tech or went to graduate school in East Texas at SFA, and that's
Mm,
where I met Melanie, my wife. And anyway,
awesome.
her dad was a big gardener guy, and I learned a
Mm,
lot of stuff from him,
mhm.
and enjoyed it. There's work that you don't like to do, and then there's work that you enjoy doing. I enjoy gardening, although, like you said, it's not always. It's not all. It can be frustrating at times, and I will say this year has been quite a challenge.
Mm. I don't know. The bushes I wanted to leave are dead now, so I can take them up. So that's nice. Though I heard roses were tough, but for some reason that's the only thing that actually grows. My roses look awesome. I'm like, I need to learn how to prune these because I have no idea. So, and I have one that actually a friend bought me that's just in its pot that I never planted because I'm like, I only have one area of sun. I don't know where to put this. So I just put the pot there. I'm like, let's see how it does. It's so happy. So apparently roses are the only thing. Maybe it's the thorns we relate to each other. I don't know what that is. I don't know.
Well, roses for a Houston area, I can see where they'd be very comfortable,
Yeah, they're
potted or
pretty
not.
happy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
they seem to be doing okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It's the only two things I can grow. Um, yes. I mean, I can't take credit. They just did their own thing. Like my children, I can't take credit. They just did their own thing. Um, so we talked about a lot of the stuff you've already got done and stuff published and all kinds of things we get to explore. What upcoming project are you super excited about?
Okay. Well, I completed the Conquest of the Veil series in July, at the end of July, with the last book, The Conquest of the Cavern of the Veil Queen, and so I will not be doing a series for a while. Uh, I'm
Oh.
taking a break from that. So I've got 3 standalone novels. So I'm working on a standalone novel now called Pringle Prawn, and it's about a fairy that meets a mortal, and she falls in love with him.
Is that her name?
Pringle Prawn, yeah.
I love that. Well, that's fun. But sorry, go ahead.
Prawn for small shrimp. Okay. I like the name Pringle. Just thought it was cool. So Pringle Prawn.
I love it. It totally fits for a fairy. That's adorable. That sounds fun. So that's the one standalone. You said there were a couple more?
Yes. I wrote the Treasure Hunt Club, which we've talked a little bit about, and Edison Jones and the Anti-Grav Elevator is a science fiction book. It's a YA novel that I won a National Feathered Quill Award for. There was a book series back when I was a kid growing up called Tom Swift, which was similar to Hardy Boys. It's a series about a young genius inventor who invents cool stuff, and he goes on cool adventures. It's been out of print probably for 2 or 3 decades now. And so my 21st century version of that is Edison Jones. And he's a 7th grader.
Nice.
He's a genius inventor. He invents cool stuff. He's also a paraplegic. He's paralyzed from the waist down from a car accident. Gotcha. But he has not let that slow him down. And in fact, he uses his inventions to kind of help live the same normal life, whether he had use of his legs or not. So I'm real proud of that book in that I won a Feathered Quill Award. I've won some regional awards. The Janus Witch is another standalone book. The Janus Witch is my most graphic novel in terms of, I would give movie ratings of PG for Edison Jones, PG-13, or if you're doing movie ratings for their other novels, except for The Janus Witch, would be an R, because it's about a vicious, violent coven of witches, and they do vicious and violent things. So it's also a love story. Imagine if you took a vicious, violent witch and she suffers an accident where she loses all memory of her previous life and suffers complete amnesia. Then have her meet and fall in love with a young man who's the complete opposite of the way she used to be. He's kind and compassionate. So a lot of different ways you can go with that story. There's more to it than that, but I don't want to, give away.
You can't give it all away. No, I like that. It's very intriguing. Very intriguing.
So Pringle Prawn's my next project. I've got, it's like a bucket's it's full to overflowing. It's like, what am I going to do? Which one? I've got them in line. Which one am I going to do next? So, I've got another book I've got an idea of called The January Man. It's about a guy who doesn't believe in love, and he dumps his girlfriend on New Year's Eve at the stroke of midnight every year, on January 1st. And
not a nice guy, that one. Yeah.
and he pisses off his fairy grandmother, who decides to teach him a lesson.
I like her already.
Yeah. And anyway, those are the next 2 projects, and also have a apocalyptic novel I'm thinking about based on the Grimm's fairy tales called The Grimm Plague, Grimm.
Yeah.
So, anyway, those, I'm not as fast a writer, Kelly, as others. Like CJ bangs out and I've known others that are series writers that bang out series in 6 months or less, 5 to 6 books.
Yep, I know them too.
I'm a book a year, maybe 2 if I'm lucky.
Yeah. Same.
So, yeah.
Same.
So
I try.
Me.
I try. Do the best I can, man. What can I say? It's the gardening. I blame the gardening. Yeah, it's not the gardening's fault. So I talked
those dang radishes.
It's all their fault. It's all their fault. I'm just talking flowers. I've never even tried. I'd even tried to grow herbs. They're like, oh yeah, you could grow basil and blah, and it's so easy. Yeah, okay. Well, I can't. So Mint takes over your garden. Well, not mine. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I need to find one of those witches that can do it for me. That's what I need.
There you go.
So, we talked earlier how, we've just finally started to watch the Lord of the Rings thing. Is there anything that you've been watching lately that you really enjoyed?
Lately, well, The Witcher is, course, season 2, I don't think is as good as season 1, but I like The Witcher.
I
Carnival
think they
Row.
got the characters down better though this season.
They did.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to second season of Carnival Row. I've watched the Wheel of Time series. A little disappointed in that.
Same.
And the Lord of the Rings sequel, but actually the one that I've liked the best that's fantasy related is the House of Dragons, and I've liked that. I read all of those books, the George R. R. Martin books, and loved them all. And now he is one person I'll have to backtrack a little bit. His books are also almost doorstop size. Somehow he manages to write them in a way that, and I think it's because he has so many dang characters in them. They're always going off doing something. So I like the House of Dragon and Stranger Things. Love that as well.
Yes, love those.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Waiting for Avatar now to hit the movie screens.
The new one? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't decide because the first one was okay, and now it's like,
wow.
I play video games that look better than that movie now. And so the appeal of the first one was actually the way it looked, not the story. The story was horrible. So for me, I didn't enjoy it. And so I'm wondering in this one, now it doesn't have that visual appeal to me when I have video games that look cooler. So I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know if it's for me. I don't know. We'll see. Haven't decided. So what? Oh, we're at the lightning round now. I should put a line here so I know when I get here. Like some kind of, because I'm like, oh wait, we've done all the questions. How is that? So lightning round. These are the important ones that the audience might judge you for. I apologize, but not much because they're a pretty cool audience. First, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Peanut butter, chocolate.
Good call. Can zombies climb?
No.
There you go. Steven will like that one. He doesn't get enough. Polos or button-ups?
Polos. No question, polos.
No question, polos.
Yeah.
Steak on the grill or cast iron?
Grill.
What is your favorite fast food restaurant?
Oh, that's don't really eat at fast food. Chick-fil-A.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
And where can fans find you and your work?
They can go to my website at www.michaelscottclifton.com, or they can go to Amazon, or they can Google author MS Clifton, which goes to all of my social media accounts.
Excellent. Well, now that Mike is your new favorite author, please make sure to review his work. You can also review us wherever it is you get your podcast. And you can follow us on twitch.tv/cursedragonship or subscribe on cursedragonship.com/YouTube. And we will see you next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central, where we have A.R.R. Ash as our guest.